Horizontv, kurunzi ya taifa.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I hope you're having yourselves a lovely evening. Do welcome to the Next Gen Show with me, Mariam Mwacharo. And as you can see, this is a new face. You're wondering probably what is happening today. You're not going to be with Faisal or Karagania as you're used to. Today, it's me, Mariam Mwacharo. And tonight, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic that has always been there all through globally. The whole world knows about this. The whole of the country right now is all up in arms knowing about this topic. And today we're going to be discussing violent extremism and countering violent extremism. And as you can see with me in the studio, I have some guests who are going to tell you exactly who they are, and they will be contributing to the topic that we have today. We'll be discussing everything about violent extremism, what it is, what it entails, how people join extremist groups, how to tackle them, what governments have done, and everything about violent extremism. And we'll also like to hear your views about violent extremism and how we can counter it in the country. So without further ado, let me start with my right hand over there. Tell us who you are, what you do, and everything about you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Dr. Halkano Abdi Wario. I'm a lecturer at Egerton University, Nakuru, and I teach Islamic studies there. Aside from that, I'm also an associate director at the Center for Studies of Radicalization, Violent Extremism, and Terrorism at the Horn International Institute of Strategic Studies here in Nairobi. Horn is a premier research think tank that started in 2017, September, and it's one of the most vibrant centers that analyzes this kind of contemporary issues, including defense and security, with a span of focus on the whole region, from Democratic Republic of Congo to Djibouti, from Sudan to Tanzania. And I'm also a senior research fellow with Volkswagen Foundation, with a project currently focusing on the aspect of Islamic knowledge and its use in countering violent extremism. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to our studios, Dr. Halkano.
Thank you.
That's a lot. I already want to ask you a few questions about it, but let's start with, and you?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Hassan Mahmoud. I am a student at the Jomo Kenyatta University, current campus, pursuing a bachelor's degree in law.
Okay.
And I'm also the outgoing chair of the Nubian University Students Organization back in Kibra, where we do free tuition program and mentorship to ensure that children have the aspiration to be like other people within the community.
Oh, that's great. That's good. Welcome to our studios. Welcome to Horizon TV. And you, my sister?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Mariam. I'm a student. I'm a medical student, and I'm currently also pursuing a degree in international relations at USIU. And I'm pleased to be in this show because I am very passionate about matters that concern the youth, especially when it comes to extremism. It doesn't matter if it's violent or it's religious or it's cultural. Yeah, so I just hope to have a good time in this show.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So those are our guests that we have tonight. Let me start with you, Mariam. You said that you're doing international relations. For people who aren't doing international relations out there, tell us how the course is.
It basically focuses on all aspects of the international system. This includes international law, there's international security, there are aspects of how, it's just basically how the international system works. So when it comes to things like violent extremism, we see this is something that cuts across all borders. It's not only happening in Kenya, it's happening even in the States. You're seeing issues in France, you're seeing issues, like everywhere.
All over the world.
So from everyone who's not in that line of study, it's just basically something that gives you it gives you like an outline of how the international system works. It's like incorporated into the international system.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with violent extremism, and let me start with the expert, Dr. Halkano. Tell us what violent extremism is.
Violent extremism is this aspect of use of force, especially by groups that ascribe to gain political power in different countries in the world today, that operationalizes certain form of political ideology that also has religion within it. And they use threats, they use violence to achieve this political gain. It's seen as part and parcel of this subset of phenomenon referred to as terrorism. Violent extremism, hence, is sometimes interchangeably used with the word terrorism.
Yeah.
And that defines it. It's a form of violence that uses mass kind of hysteria in order to create climate of disorder and violence in order to achieve certain political gain. It's a form of violent form of statecraft, violent form of state formation, if you could put it that way.
So it's about what ideologies run around violent extremism. You know, say for example, if I were in a school and say me and a couple of students came together and created a group and forced teachers to actually take out a subject, can that be regarded as violent extremism?
It may not necessarily be defined as such. That could be a form of student protest or dissent within their own institution. Violent extremism becomes a violent extremist kind of phenomenon if it has this bigger political agenda at the end of it all. Aside from that, there is this aspect of criminality. There is this aspect of going beyond constitutional order of that specific country that they operate in. It's a form of not just taking the law into your own hand, but taking the law into your own hand as a mass of people in order to create certain form of political agenda and structure that run contrary to the state constitution or secular nature or whatever nature of that state is. And it's a phenomenon that has been seen since the Cold War, if we could put it that way, since the fall of the Berlin Wall onward, going forward, where certain forms of population felt marginalized, certain forms of population felt unrepresented, and when they discover that the means of democratic gaining within that country becomes difficult, these individuals organize themselves around political ideology, in which, for this matter, religion forms a very instrumental tool for mobilization, a very instrumental tool for appropriation of spaces, a very instrumental role in creation of togetherness for this group of people who want to achieve this political gain.
Let me ask you, Hassan, after all this that you've had, what was your understanding of violent extremism?
Thank you. My understanding of violent extremism is either an individual or a group of people who possess a certain belief or act in a certain way, which is radical because of either they've been indoctrinated in a certain way. So they possess certain principles or philosophies within themselves that they want to push or agitate for something. It could either be in line with religion, it could as well be political, or it could as well be social. So it's like a movement within people, which is not illegal in itself. It turns out to be a crime. So with an intention that they must be heard, and that's, I agree with what Dr. is saying. They could either be marginalized group or people who feel they've not been heard. As a result of that, they've been indoctrinated to come out, or as well, like the youths, probably there are things that have not been done either due to government failures, so they want to agitate for that to happen.
So I know that, you know, from the moment, you know, countries started being colonized and then we got independence, we had our own governments, right? How do you think, let me ask you, Dr. Halkano, how did this start? How did violent extremism start? How did, you know, people start coming together and wanting to be heard or take over? How did it start?
For us to have a better understanding of the growth of violent extremism, we have to go specific in individual countries. Let's take Somalia, for instance. 1991, Siad Barre's regime was overthrown, and out of that chaotic environment, there was no structure that could govern the country. For about probably 1.5 decades, different warlords run by different small or coalition of clans ruled specific region in Somalia. It was until 2005, 2006, a coalition of religious scholars came together and saw that if we could use, you know, religion as a binding force in Somalia, we can actually form a government that is much more representative and so on. That was when Islamic Court Union was born. And Islamic Court Union had a very short lifespan. It was overthrown by, of course, the region was very unstable with the growth of Islamist government. Islamist, in this case, I'm using it, that appropriation of religion for purpose of political gain. So there was a feeling, for instance, in the West that this is the Taliban of Africa. And that overthrow resulted in rise of Al-Shabaab. And Al-Shabaab has been growing since then as a violent extremist group. And so if we take country-specific, we can understand the growth of violent extremism. In Kenya's case, the attraction towards this global jihadism, if we could use it that way, meant that youth in Kenya were attracted to this macho, this brave, whatever kind of picture that they demonstrate. They were lured by this narrative of gaining much more here on earth and hereafter. But at the end of it all, what we understand from our own research is that they are volunteering for other people's war, in which they die, as we saw recently at Dusit. So to have a grasp of violent extremism, we have to also look at specific countries in which it grows. There's no one single explanation that may surface for understanding of growth of this phenomenon.
Now, Mariam, studying international relations, you also do take a look at conflict management, right? Do you also, maybe have you taken a look at the history of where violence started? You know, like worldwide and specifically in our country. Where do you think violent extremism started?
If we could, just like Dr. Halkano has said, if you look, when it comes to how it emanated or how it came to be, I think we look at specific countries and you look at specific violent extremist groups. If you take, for example, Al-Qaeda has been there for like the longest period.
Yes.
And it also came in when they started when the likes of Osama bin Laden were trying to liberate Afghanistan from the sovereign union, you know. So when they started that, they felt like if we go in, you know, most of these violent extremist groups are actually for the idea that we are liberating people. So when they went to Afghanistan, the point was to liberate the people in Afghanistan, but they were doing it in a violent manner, you know. So when they when it came out to a point where other Islamic states started, you know, coming in, they felt like, you know, Islam has been marginalized. We need to help our people. You know, we are there for the people, but it's just, you know, selfish gains. So they started issues like we see like Iraq was having issues.
Yes.
Syria is also currently having issues. A lot of Islamic states are actually having issues, and it's also coming in the point whereby they're being extremist, not in the sense of they're trying to liberate these people in real sense, but they're trying to gain for themselves what is beneficial for them, not what is beneficial for these other people.
Hassan, because you're studying law, do we have laws that are put out there maybe to govern such kind of pull, you know, such kind of atrocities?
Thank you. I think if you look at the Kenyan context, we clearly have a marriage of laws that are there to protect the citizen, because the purpose of law is to ensure order. And therefore, if you do anything that goes contrary to what the government intends an individual to do, in itself, you're violating public order, which should be is an obligation for every citizen within our country. And therefore, even within the Constitution, the right to life, the right to decent living, the right to respect other people's right. If you decide to kill an individual, either because you possess a certain philosophy or you've been indoctrinated in a certain way, then it means you're going contrary to those provisions or acts of parliament that protect the right to life, the right to decent living, how should one live. So I can say we have a lot of laws within our country that are there, like Daktari has said about the transboundary crimes. We also have within our country laws that help to do that.
Let's talk about minority groups. As a country, we cannot be a perfect state, but I assume that there are laws out there to also protect minority groups. Like she said, Muslims who are feeling maybe, you know, marginalized or something like that. What laws are there to protect minority groups?
For example, thank you. Within our constitution, we have a law that tries to make sure that the minorities within the community have a say in terms of the socio-economic empowerment. That is one. in terms of giving out positions, we should have this threshold of the minority within the law. Looking at it from a broader perspective, we again look at women. There's a perception that they are the minority. What does the law provide? We have the old people. What does the law provide? And of course, we have a provision on the youth who are considered to be among the minority. And so economic empowerment for the youths, with the Constitution clearly provides, and setting out programs for the youths is also within the Constitution. And probably we can say the reason why we are having this radicalization and people being extremist, especially among the youths, is because some of these provisions are not being implemented. They've just been passed through an act of parliament, but there are no people to push them, or probably the youths do not know, like, how do I apply for this fund to start my own business?
Okay, we'll get back to that in a short while. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot help but think how many questions you already have. Let's take a short break. We'll be right back and continue with this topic.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation. Horizon TV, kurunzi ya taifa.
Assalamu alaikum once again. Welcome back to the Next Gen Show. This is the second part, and we are tackling violent extremism and countering violent extremism in our country. Just before we left, we were talking about, women and the laws that are there to govern countries and communities against violent extremism. Now, before we continue, people out there, please do contribute to this topic on our social media platforms. Send us a text message. Tell us what you think so far. Send your questions and we'll be answering them. Now, before we left, Hassan, we were talking about women, and you did mention that women are regarded as a minority according to the laws in our country. But when we look at the population of women to men worldwide, it's like 1 to 4, 1 to 6, 1 to 10. Women are more. So how are women a minority?
Thank you. Looking at it from the Kenyan context, of course, like we've had even in the parliament,
yes,
there are legislations that women have been agitating or trying to push so that they can actually have a certain threshold within the parliament. Within even the same constitution, we have a position created for the women representative. These are all affirmative actions which are being taken to ensure that we try to balance the 3-gender rule. But looking at it from a wider perspective at the same time, you will come to realize that in terms of, you look at the profession, you look at leadership, how many people dominate? We generally have very many men taking over this leadership. So how then do we make sure that these ladies and women rise into these positions is by putting the affirmative actions and balancing these situations so that we have the women taking part.
So there are more women in the world, but not many women are given opportunity to voice, to make a change in the society.
It's because they are, if you look at it, their voice has not been heard. I say, of course, we can say, Alhamdulillah, the voice is coming out, but still, it needs to come out in a better way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Halkano, let me ask you, you as an expert, what are some of the reasons that, lead to people joining extremist groups? And this understanding that, extremist groups involve so many various, ages of people, right? So what leads them to join extremist groups?
To start with, primarily, those who join violent extremist groups are predominantly male.
Okay.
Though there are significant number of women, for instance, currently who have been associated, who have fled to Somalia, or who have gone to other theaters of militancy. The reasons why individuals join violent extremist groups are very diverse. There are a couple of reasons that have been cited across studies. One of which is the economic aspect of it. The level of poverty is considerably high in some of these areas where recruitment occur. But this doesn't necessarily mean individuals who join these groups are poor. As we saw recently, some of these individuals who actually are blowing up places here in Kenya are from well-to-do families.
Yes.
Another reason that has been cited often is this aspect of real or perceived marginalization. Individuals feel that they fall prey to narratives that are constructed by violent extremist groups. What terrorist groups do is they collect together all kind of reasons that exist in a specific situation and create what is referred to as meta-narrative. A narrative that makes an all-encompassing sense. You'll be told you are marginalized, you'll be told you don't get jobs, police are harassing you, you don't have a right to exercise your religion better, and so you are given a choice. Why don't you do hijrah? Why don't you migrate to an area that is ruled by Muslim law in its entirety? So this aspect of marginalization is often cited. Other aspects are individuals who are criminals, for instance, are wanted by the police for quite a number of crimes, and they find refuge in a terrorist group that provides them with a chance to even vent their anger and revenge against state security apparatus often. So these are some of the major reasons that are cited. Others can
Mariam, you're a student in a university, you come from a community, you're pursuing international relations here in Nairobi in USIU, but you also mingle with other people from various, regions. We know violent extremism has been there for so many years. What could have been the reasons as to why people join these extremist groups?
I think when you look at the aspect of why people join, you look at push factors and pull factors. Okay. So for the push factors is what actually pushes an individual to think that if I join this this kind of group, I tend to gain something, or I tend to have a sense of belonging. If you look at most of these people who commit these atrocities, most of them are actually lacking a sense of belonging. So you find like someone had a very rough childhood, maybe people used to neglect you, used to go through bullying, you come from a community where people are perceived like they're marginalized. So when these groups come to you and they start telling you, they start creating these narratives that, when you come to this side, you'll stop feeling like this. You'll actually have like a vengeance. You can be able to revenge on certain issues that have been done to you. And when you look at the pull factors are now what these groups are offering you to actually attract you in. And most of them is in terms of money. You're given a lot of money, you've not like held such amount of money, and you feel, if I continue being in this group, I'll get rich. But what they forget is you get this money, but where are you going to spend this money? And you're just in the camp doing, training for this atrocities and certain things. And another pull factor would be like they give you a sort of a sense of belonging. You are in a sort of like a brotherhood or sisterhood where you're having your fellow Muslims. You're talking about, for example, how, you know, they've been attacking us in Kenya. You know, we've been going through these certain issues. But now that we are together, you know, we are stronger together. We can actually do more when we are together. So when you look at things that actually push the youth into these issues, you look at two things: what pushes them, what is pushing you towards that direction, and what is pulling you inside. Because you can be pushed, but the pulling is not it's not actually very attractive.
Yes.
So you find like they get to get these things that you've had in your head, like you always wanted. It's just like sort of playing with your psychology, because you tend to start speaking, you know, I want to join this group for certain issues. I'm very strong about Islamophobia. I don't want people to discriminate Muslims. I feel bad when I hear a Muslim has been discriminated. And they tell you that, you know, when you come to this other side, you will not be able to, when someone does that, there's this way out, you know. You don't have to just keep speaking. You can just, you know, blow up someone, you know, kill someone, send certain messages, you know, things to just make people try to feel your presence there. And you know, that's like the main reasons that are pushing people into that direction.
That's actually very scary. If we take a look at, you know, what Mariam has just told us, if you feel like you have a certain vengeance towards something, or you've gone through something so hard in your childhood, you know, growing up, and then someone gives you an array to actually create more violence, and that attracts you, that's really scary. I assume in law you have taken a look at such scenarios now that, you know, the world is changing. And I know people usually say syllabus ya law huwa haiishi. It's always increasing and increasing because of the things that, you know, happen every day. Say for example, you as a Muslim, you as a lawyer, you know, and you're going to face such cases, probably, a'udhu billah, but you will face these cases even in, you know, in the future, because some of these haven't even been solved. Like we know the person who was responsible for the attack at the Dusit, the one who, you know, he's still a wanted man, and he was wanted since 2014, you know. So probably lawyers like yourself are tackling such a case right now. What do you think is the way forward for this? You know, having, you know, we don't have a perfect society. We have laws that usually take care of the, you know, marginalized communities. What about those laws that, you know, we don't have a perfect growing up? We must face some, you know, some hurdles. What should a country do?
Okay, thank you. The first thing that I must say is, if you look at it from a community point of view, a family is a basic unit of the society, and so the family has a responsibility, because the lesson starts from the household level. So if we take it that the whole family decides that we want to bring our children in line with the philosophies of Islam, if you're a Muslim, if you're a Christian, in line with the Christian philosophies, which talks about brotherhood, respect your brother, respect life, live in a virtuous way, then from that point we are able to make sure that the people we bring up, the children that grow to become better citizens in our country, then that can work. At the same time, within the community level, we look at the Nyumba Kumi initiative. If we decide to strengthen the Nyumba Kumi initiative, I know Mariam is my neighbor. How do I take care of Mariam? How does she in return do that for me? With that we can also help. But at the same time, it is also important that the reason why most of these youths are going into extremism is because to some point there is that lack of knowledge.
Okay.
Because if you have knowledge, you cannot go into what you do not know. Until you indoctrinate a certain philosophy in my head, or certain notion which is radical, it means I do not know in the first instance, the first position. For example, what does Islam say about jihad? When can you go for jihad? You have jihadun nafs, have you fought with yourself? Then why do you extend to that level? So if people have this all information, then it's easier to say that I cannot be radicalized because this is a position of law, this is what Islam says, this is what we do. But again, we need to look still from within the community level, more empowerment, sensitization, creating forums where the youths can know more about this, and then it can help.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just before we continue, let's take a look at a clip from capacity development from the European Union when they were talking about some of the reasons why youth actually join these extremist groups. Let's have a look.
From what we have gathered and meshed from the insights that were given by the young people in real time, one is lack of opportunities. Lack of opportunities for dignified livelihood. Not everybody can have direct government employment. This inability to generate some income for themselves through self-employment has itself, which is also a function of the education system, has been one driver of young people's hopelessness. Secondly, there's also disillusionment, I think, with poor governance in the counties and communities that they come from. And with a rising population, with a huge youth bulge, with no significant comparing opportunity levels for these young people, it creates an environment for hopelessness.
Dr. Halako, there was a time I was doing a research with BREV, Building Resilience Against Violence Extremism in Kenya, and they actually said some of the people that join extremist groups are even children in madrasas. Okay, can you tell us just very short, how does that happen?
Often if we have madrasa education that is not necessarily regulated by local mosque communities, individuals who have links, for instance, with violent extremist group can start their own parallel madrasa system that does not necessarily communicate with those that are run by other Muslim organizations. And in this kind of environment, it's very easy to mold the mind of a young child.
Yes.
Individuals who join violent extremist groups, if they grow in a milieu, in a culture, in an education system in which certain form of violence is continuously glorified, in which certain interpretation of history of Islam is overemphasized vis-a-vis, multicultural, multi-religious nature of our society, these individuals generally grow up to be violent extremists.
Okay.
So my take is it is upon our Muslim community to continuously monitor among our own self what kind of teachings actually occur in madrasas that are not necessarily regulated by institutions that are recognized by the larger Muslim community, so that individuals who give religious instruction in these places are considered as individuals who are upright, whose education backgrounds are known, whose links within the larger Muslim community, religious, for instance, there are associations, for instance, for imams and preachers in Kenya, the association for Muslim religious instructors. If they are part and parcel of these, then chances are that individuals cannot run parallel programs that are going to end up recruiting or changing the minds of our young people towards certain form of violent extremists.
So as we can see, there are so many reasons as to why youth and even children join violent extremist groups. And as Dr. Halako has already started saying that, we should take a look at how our madrasas, how they are teaching our children into the right principles of Islam. And we know that also brainwashing is one of the reasons that these people join violent extremist groups. So when we come back on our next segment, we're going to talk about, brainwashing, and we're going to talk about how we should handle these people. Say, for example, if there's an attack and not all of them are killed, some of them are captured, what should we do to these people? Okay, let's take a break and we'll be right back.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.
Welcome back, dear viewers. We are talking about violent extremism in the country and how to counter violent extremism in Kenya and in Africa in general. We know that these issues have been happening. We know about violent extremism all over the world. And most of Africa, if I can come to you, Dr. Halako, most of Africa that is affected by violent extremism is the Horn of Africa and East Africa. Is there a condition, a geographical condition that is actually, perpetrating these people to actually attack our country or, or our nations on this side?
Thank you. Violent extremism thrives where there is state failure.
Okay.
If a state is not functioning, then chances are that individuals in those countries will group together into either warlords or into terrorist groups that are going to look for power by all means.
Okay.
Every other country that is experiencing terrorism today has this aspect of state failure.
State failure.
States are not represented well. There are a lot of ungoverned spaces. Take northern Nigeria, for instance. Boko Haram is thriving in northeast of the country, Maiduguri, Borno State, for instance.
Yes.
If you look at other countries in Somalia, it's the same case.
Yes.
If you look at Syria, state collapses. Yemen.
Yes.
So there's a very strong correlation between state failure and violent extremism. Why us? Why is it so much that all the time Kenya is attacked and not say Ethiopia or Djibouti or other countries that contribute? Kenya represents one of the strongest countries in this region.
Okay.
It is the headquarters of most of the international organization. It has a very thriving civil society culture, and it has a population of Muslims that are also well represented in its structures and who will feel associate themselves with a larger Muslim discourse, a larger global Muslim discourses. And so for geopolitical reasons, terrorism is media related. Terrorism always looks for high impact kind of coverage. So if they attack a village somewhere in Ethiopia or anywhere, it makes much more sense if they do similar kind of atrocities within Kenya because of the global attention that the country always enjoys.
Okay.
And aside from that, the unfortunate part is that quite a number of our young people have bought into this. And buying into this means that we face much more risk from Kenyan own volunteers into these extremist groups than Somali Al-Shabaab, for instance, recruits.
True.
If what we saw by the recent attack in Dusit is anything to go by, most of these individuals are people who, even if they walked anywhere in this country or if they travel anywhere in this city, no one will even raise suspicion about their non-belongingness within the Kenyan state. So the unfortunate part is now we are part and parcel of this global violent extremism targets because largely we neighbor a country that has been without any form of governance for the last 30 years plus, until recently when they started getting their house in order.
Okay, so it's state failure.
State failure.
I do understand that from time immemorial, you know, the persons that have been captured, that have perpetrated such actions, do undergo a particular process to rehabilitate them. Some of them die, unfortunately, but some of them, when they're captured, they're rehabilitated. And I understand they usually undergo psychological trauma. Let me not start with you. Let me start with our students. What would you want the country to do to these individuals once they are captured? This is someone who has killed maybe hundreds, maybe tens, maybe hundreds, maybe millions of people. What would you like the government to do to them?
I think the larger population would want them to be assassinated, you know, because you killed someone, you die by the sword, you know. But if we are to go by that narrative where you're looking at the aspect of he did this, he has to go through the same thing, we are actually luring ourselves into the same beliefs that they have. You have
so
to die when we're not any different from them. So if at all these individuals are captured, I think the best thing for the government to do is the law needs to take initiative on what is supposed to be done to them. If it means them going to court rulings, let them do that. If it means let the court decide what kind of punishment or what kind of what kind of things are going to be put up with, so that they're able to to rehabilitate. And because I know if this kind of people come back into the society, it becomes very hard for them to actually mingle back with us.
That's true.
The society is going to just be like, you killed people, you cannot kill 100 people and still come and be my neighbor. No, it can't happen. I'm not, in as much as you've repented, you've gone through rehabilitation programs, and your mind is you're psychologically coming back into a normal human being. I will not personally, I wouldn't, I will not really want to be in that kind of space. But at the same time, I think in as much as the law is going to take its initiative in that, we also need to understand that if they go by the law, and they are charged for their for their crimes, and it happens that maybe, I don't know how the law works, maybe Hassan will elaborate how it works. Do they go into life imprisonment, or they go for a certain years and come back. I think if they go out and come back, and we have measures of how they'll be controlled within the society, and I think it can be like a starting point for us to actually rehabilitate them and have them back into the society. If it's if we're having a program whereby you come out from the jail and you're able to maybe report once in a while into certain investigative places, and you're actually being followed up and certain things, I think it could be a good start for us to actually start to having them back once they have gone through the trial, not before they go through the trial, not when they're just in the run and they're going everywhere and they're like, you know what, they have told us they have changed. No, they have to go through the law, because people lost their lives, people lost people they care about, people lost people they love, people have become orphans, people have become widows. The pain is still there, so they need to go through the like the mentorship program. Some mentorship, some psychological help, balancing and psychological analyzing again, for them to come back into the society.
I do understand that there are programs in the country that actually do run that, and even they're being assisted by non-governmental organizations, international organizations all over. Before we continue, let's take a short clip about a mentorship program that is happening in Somalia by a very beautiful young Muslim lady, and how she's helping them, and she's talking to us about how the condition of these people are psychologically. Let's have a look at that clip.
They have low self-esteem, they don't have critical thinking, they can't make decisions on their own, they are unemployed, I can say, they're idle, which makes them good targets for this kind of radicals. Individuals that are like isolated in their community, the community doesn't want to integrate them, so us is like we're giving them a second chance.
So as you can see, they've already said that the community gives them a second chance. Once they come from this program, they are psychologically traumatized. They have been captured. Yes, they have done these atrocities. They have killed so many people, and they are mentally and psychologically damaged. Let me not come to you first. Let me start with our expert, because you're in the research, you're there in the ground. You have probably seen such things. What do you think, what kind of help should we give these people and to the society as well? Because I will not be willing to probably invite such a guest into my home. You killed, I forgive you, but how am I going to live with this person?
Yeah, just to go back a little bit in the past, during the time of the late Nkaiseri, is a time he announced amnesty for all those criminals who have joined Al-Shabaab and other militant groups to come back to Kenya, and the government is going to forgive them for the sins they have done. For the crimes, the sins is supposed to be forgiven by God, but for the crimes they have done. And so a couple of them, quite a couple of them turned up for this amnesty program. But we need to concretize this amnesty within the law, as the lawyer here will agree. And Kenya is also, I think, at the moment, thinking on operationalizing the programs that deals with disengagement, de-radicalization, reintegration, and rehabilitation. So there are state agencies that are tasked with this, and that they are thinking, how can we get people back? Because individuals get from violent extremism in two ways. Either they are captured or they voluntarily run away from violent extremist group. And it's extremely difficult. As I was discussing with the panelists before, going into violent extremism group is easy.
It's easy, it's
Getting
true.
out is difficult.
Yes.
So individuals have to plan critically so that they are not necessarily captured by the group that they have joined, so that they can be killed over spies or whatever kind of crime they will do. So when they come back, often these individuals do not trust, for reasons we all know, do not trust the state security agencies sometimes. So we need to build very good relationship between the community and the police. And at the same time, if these individuals feel they can approach some of the major Muslim human rights organizations, these individuals can actually come into these organizations, and they are assured that their safety and security is well done, so that the radicalization and disengagement program is done within the realm of the law, so that these individuals do not suddenly disappear, and then we have the problem of violent extremism, and then the cycle continues.
Yes.
That our people are disappearing, we go back into this. So there are certain programs that are thought of, I think, by the state in probably a couple of years or so, but other countries have already done. Other countries have very strong de-radicalization, disengagement programs. For instance, Saudi has, United States has, the UK through the Prevent program has, Netherlands have a very strong program. For instance, there's a model that has been copied across the world called Aarhus model. This Aarhus model is from Denmark. A city decides that if our boys are leaving, if our girls are leaving Daesh, if they're coming into our territory back to city, what do we do? Do we cast them out and look at them as you know, people with stigma and so on, or do we embrace them but take them through a very elaborate psychosocial support system, so that when these individuals finally become part of us, they no longer pose a threat to themselves and to the society,
to the community,
or the people whom they join are not going to come after them.
So yeah, I know that time is not even on our side. I feel like we haven't even completely exhausted, but let's pause for a moment and let's learn from a particular video that I believe that was coined actually by the Horn International Institute for, you know, strategic studies, and it was talking about violent extremism, and this guy was actually advising a boy on how to not join that group. Let's take a look at that video first.
It's okay, kid. You can come out. You must be the new recruit.
Yes? Why are you doing this? Aren't you one of us?
Correction, kid. I was one of you. And now, I am not.
But you are one of our best soldiers. I've heard many stories about you. In fact, you are the reason I decided to join Al-Shabaab.
Sorry to disappoint you. There is an escape route at the back. Run and never come back to this God-forsaken place.
Why are you sparing my life?
You remind me of myself as a young kid. I was just about your age when I first joined the Al-Shabaab. You know, when they recruit you, they give you this picture that you'll be doing some holy work, only for you to realize that you are nothing more than a foot soldier, a killing machine for some rich warlord.
Well, aren't we soldiers? And soldiers kill?
Yes. Yes, we are. And it's true, soldiers kill, but out of necessity. So when someone asks you to kill innocent and unarmed people, then you know something is wrong. This is not what I signed up for.
But they're the enemy.
Enemy, you say? From where I stand, stopping groups like the Al-Shabaab is indeed the only way to protect the integrity of Islam. Did you know that we killed more Muslims in Somalia than any other group? Look at ISIS, killing fellow Muslims on a daily basis.
Well, I've never looked at it from that perspective. What am I supposed to do?
I will give you advice I was not given. You may be looking for a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, or even an avenue for release. But once you join this life, there is no turning back. The things you will be asked to do will haunt you forever. The ghost of the innocent souls you killed will visit you even in your sleep till it drives you insane. That's how they get you to be suicidal. At that point, you have nothing to lose. To them, you're just but another pawn. You can do more for the world alive than dead. Never let anyone tell you that your life is worthless. Now go back to your family. Consider this a second chance in life.
We both know there is no going back, and we come looking for you.
Not if they think you are dead.
I don't think I understand.
I will be blowing this joint up and everything in it. They will assume you are just one of the casualties. Now, go!
Yeah, that's very sad to watch. As you have seen, that boy was given a second chance by that guy, and as we can see, the people who join these militia group, these extremist groups, they aren't really happy. They join them in a belief that they're doing something, but once they're in there and they cannot come back to the society, they regret it completely. Last, completely, give us your advice to the youth, to the community, to the society on how to really go about violent extremism in the country. Very short.
Thank you, Mariam. The first, as I earlier said, is that we must first focus on the family. If we can strengthen our family, then every other thing will move on. Secondly, strengthening the Nyumba Kumi initiative, which is, I think, it's taking place, but we need to make it even better. And finally, from our academic sphere, we need to bring an aspect of extremism. We begin to teach within our syllabus and the
knowledge,
curriculum. The knowledge.
Mariam, anything to say? How would you advise your community apart from knowledge, strengthening Nyumba Kumi?
I think another thing that can be done is by running civic education platforms, whereby the youth are given information that regards to violent extremism, like what are the signs that you're becoming a violent extremist, what are the things that like give them a hint on what these people will come with, but when they meet these certain people and people are giving them these ideas, they are radical enough to know this is not the way to go. If I go this line, it means I'm going to the violent extremist group. So, and lastly, like I would also emphasize on the Nyumba Kumi initiative, get to know your neighbors. Like we earlier saw one of the people who was part of the Dorset attack was actually living among people who thought he was actually they described him as a very peace-loving person, a very good neighbor. So I think it's high time we take the Nyumba Kumi initiative very seriously. Get to know your neighbor, get to know, go an extra inch or even knowing what they do, what do they do with their lives, what they do during their their other time. And in case you have information about someone who you are having like doubts about what they do, I think the best thing to do is to inform the security agencies for us to avoid a repeat of certain things.
True.
Yeah.
Dr. Halako, finally.
To add to all this recommendation is, as Muslim religious communities, as Muslim religious leaders, we need to invest much more in alternative narrative. We need to debunk this meta-narrative that is continuously constructed by violent extremist group in order to recruit. Prevention is better than cure. Let's use mosques, let's use madrasas. Let's try to ensure that there is no space for these individuals to preach this corrupted understanding of our religion. Secondly, there are a couple of programs that are already run by support of international organization or the state. For instance, almost all the counties in Muslim region, starting from Garissa, Mandera, Wajir, Marsabit, Isiolo, the coastal ones, Lamu, Kilifi, all of them have county action plans that are specifically supposed to address the issue of violent extremism. Let's implement this. Let's bring everybody aboard. Let's address some of the challenges that our community face so that nobody is going to Somalia to fight into other people's war or come back and attack our communities here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was a very informative session. I learned a lot myself. I have upgraded from how I came back in here. I feel like we still need to have another sitting and delve more into the details of violent extremism in the country. But to you, our viewers, thank you very much for joining us this night. Do send us your messages, your views, your comments, questions on our social media platforms and our SMS lines, and we will get back to you on this issue. Thank you very much. Have yourself a lovely night. Ma'as-salam. See you on the next episode.
Horizon TV, the beacon for the nation.